Have you ever stood under the vast silent canopy of night and felt the weight of its indifference? Have you ever screamed a question into that velvet darkness, a question of why, of what for, and heard nothing back but the echo of your own small voice? There is a forgotten courage in that question, a sacred defiance in the refusal to accept a pre-written answer. If you have ever felt that magnificent loneliness, that audacious need to know, let the silent stars know you are watching by liking this video. It is a quiet signal that you are part of this ancient vigil. And to join the caravan of thinkers who dare to pour the wine of truth for themselves, make sure you subscribe to the channel. The conversation is as old as the cosmos, and you will not want to miss your turn to speak. This is the story of a man who did not just ask that question, but lived it. A man who challenged the heavens, not with prayer, but with poetry, with mathematics, with a cup of wine held steadily in his hand as the world around him trembled with false certainties. He was the keeper of an eternal question, a question that rings more true today than it did 1,000 years ago in the heart of Persia. His name has been whispered in taverns and universities ever since, a password for those who are unafraid of the dark. We are about to journey into the heart of his rebellion, a rebellion not of the sword, but of the soul. It is a journey into a tavern at the edge of the universe, where the only scripture is the turning of the stars, and the only prayer is the fearless embrace of the now. Forget what you have been told about faith. Forget the promises of paradise and the threats of damnation. We are going to a place where doubt is the highest form of worship, and the deepest truth is found not in a holy book, but in the fleeting beauty of a rose, in the curve of a lover's lips, in the profound and honest clarity of wine. This is the path of the questioner, the legacy of a man who measured the sun and the moon and chose to find his God in a single, perfect, unrepeatable moment. Listen, the tavern door is opening, the wine is being poured, the eternal question is waiting. The world in which he walked was a world of answers, a world carved from the stone of absolute certainty, where God had spoken, the prophets had relayed the message, and the duty of humanity was simply to obey. The lines were drawn in the sand between the saved and the damned, the pious and the sinner, the believer and the infidel. The air itself was thick with dogma, a heavy blanket that smothered the spark of individual inquiry. To question was not merely a sign of confusion, it was a declaration of rebellion. It was to stand on the edge of a cliff, not of ignorance, but of heresy. And yet, into this rigid world, a soul was born with the heart of a poet and the mind of a mathematician. He was a man who could precisely calculate the solar year to a degree of accuracy unmatched for centuries. A man who could map the celestial bodies with breathtaking precision. And it was this very intimacy with the cosmic clockwork that sowed the seed of his magnificent doubt. He looked at the stars, not as the glittering throne room of a benevolent deity, but as a vast, silent, and impeccably logical machine. A machine that moved with a terrifying and beautiful indifference to the prayers, the hopes, and the fears of the tiny beings clinging to a speck of dust called Earth. He saw the universe as a grand, unfeeling equation, and it did not add up to the comforting stories told by the preachers in the mosques. Where was the evidence of a personal, caring creator in the cold, hard mathematics of the cosmos? Where was the justice in a world where the virtuous suffered and the wicked prospered, only to be balanced on the unseen ledger of an afterlife he could not prove? His heresy was not a denial of God, but a demand for evidence. He was a scientist of the soul, and he refused to accept a hypothesis without proof. His laboratory was the world itself, his tools were his senses, and his experiments were the moments of his own life. He chose to trust the tangible data of his own experience, the warmth of the sun, the taste of wine, the logic of numbers over the intangible promises of the clergy. He was a man standing in a locked room, and while others were content to describe the beautiful garden on the other side based on ancient scrolls, he chose to examine the lock, to study the door, to question the very nature of the walls that enclosed him. His doubt was not a sign of a cold heart, but of a mind burning with an unquenchable fire for what was real, for what was true. To understand the rebellion of the astronomer-poet, one must first understand the symbol at its heart, the wine. In the rigid world he inhabited, wine was the emblem of sin, the forbidden indulgence, the path to damnation. The pious shunned it, the preachers condemned it, and the law forbade it. But for him, the grape became the source of a forbidden gospel, the cup a chalice for a different kind of communion. He saw that the fear of wine was not about the liquid itself, but about what it represented, the uncontrolled, unapologetic, and ecstatic embrace of the present moment. It was a sacrament of the now. To drink the wine was to make a conscious choice, to dissolve the anxieties of the past and the fears of the future into the warm, flowing reality of the immediate. It was an act of defiance against the tyranny of a promised tomorrow. The preachers sold salvation on credit, a paradise to be enjoyed only after a lifetime of penance and obedience. He, the pragmatist, the mathematician, preferred cash. He saw that this life, this very breath, was the only currency he could be certain of, and he refused to devalue it in the hope of a posthumous reward. The wine was his tool for sharpening the senses, for stripping away the veils of dogma and tradition that clouded humanity's vision. In its intoxicating clarity, the rigid lines of the world began to blur. The distinction between the saint and the sinner, the mosque and the tavern, seemed less important than the shared humanity of those who drink from the cup of life. It was a great equalizer. The wine he speaks of in his verses is rarely just fermented grape juice. It is a profound metaphor for direct, unmediated experience. It is the intoxication that comes from looking into the eyes of a lover, from solving a complex mathematical problem, from watching a rose unfurl at dawn. It is the state of being so utterly consumed by the present that the nagging voice of the ego, with its fears and its ambitions, is silenced. He invited us to the tavern not to become drunkards, but to become realists. The tavern is the sanctuary for the honest soul, a place where the heavy armor of piety can be removed and the naked truth of our fleeting existence can be confronted without fear. To drink his wine is to have the courage to face the universe as it is, not as we wish it to be. It is to find joy, not in the promise of eternity, but in the exquisite, heartbreaking beauty of a single, unrepeatable moment. The second great symbol in his cosmic tavern is the stars. While others saw them as divine lamps or the watchful eyes of angels, the astronomer-poet saw a terrifying and magnificent truth. He saw a clock, a grand, impossibly complex, and utterly impersonal celestial machine that measured out the seconds, the years, the millennia, with a rhythm that had nothing to do with human affairs. His days were spent in the observatory, mapping their movements, predicting their eclipses, refining the calendar to an almost perfect measure of the solar year. And his nights were spent with the existential vertigo that came from this knowledge. The stars were not a comforting presence. They were a constant reminder of his own insignificance. They were the ultimate expression of an indifferent universe. The sky for him was the great unanswering wall. He hurled his questions at it, questions of justice, of purpose, of meaning, and the only answer was the silent, predictable turning of the constellations. This silence was not an absence of God for him, it was a property of God. It was the defining characteristic of the divine mystery. He could not reconcile the passionate, interventionist, and judgmental God of the holy books with the cold, silent, mathematical precision of the heavens he measured with his own hands and eyes. The God of the preachers was a character in a human drama. The God of the cosmos was the drama itself, silent, vast, and incomprehensible. This led him to a profound and deeply unsettling conclusion. If the heavens will not provide the answers, then we must find them ourselves here on earth. If the cosmos is indifferent, then we must create our own meaning. Our lives, like the brief flicker of a firefly against the eternal night, are all the more precious for their brevity. The stars taught him the most important lesson, that time is a predator. The great celestial clock was ticking, and every tick was a moment of his life turning to dust. This realization was not a cause for despair, but a catalyst for a fierce and passionate embrace of life. If time is all we have, then to waste it on worrying about a future we cannot know or a past we cannot change is the greatest of sins. The stars, in their silent majesty, were his ultimate spiritual guides. They taught him humility in the face of the infinite. They taught him the value of the finite. And they taught him that the most profound act of worship is not to bow in submission to an imagined deity, but to stand tall, look up, and have the courage to embrace the beautiful, terrifying, and silent truth of our existence. At the center of his philosophical universe lies a powerful and disturbing metaphor, the potter and the clay. It is a story that has been told in many traditions to illustrate the relationship between the creator and the created. In the conventional telling, we are the passive clay, and a wise, all-powerful potter shapes us according to a divine plan. Our cracks, our imperfections are our own fault, a result of our own sinfulness. We have no right to question the potter's design. But the astronomer-poet takes this familiar story and shatters it on the floor of his tavern. He picks up the shards and rearranges them into a question, an accusation, a challenge aimed directly at the heavens. He looks at the suffering, the injustice, the sheer randomness of human existence, and he does not see the work of a perfect craftsman. He sees a world filled with flawed vessels, pots that are misshapen, cracked, and destined to break. And he dares to ask the ultimate blasphemous question. If the pot is flawed, who is to blame, the potter or the clay? He poses it with a lawyer's logic. If the potter is all-knowing, he knew how the pot would turn out before he even began to shape it. If he is all-powerful, he could have made it perfect. Why then does he create a vessel he knows will be weak, fill it with the wine of life and desire, and then punish it for spilling a few drops? This is not the questioning of a petulant child. It is the cold, hard logic of a mathematician applied to the problem of theodicy. He turns the concept of sin on its head. He suggests that what we call sin is not a rebellion against the potter's will, but an inevitable consequence of the way we were made. We are designed to be tempted, to desire, to stumble. How can we be judged for fulfilling the design of our own creator? He looks at the broken shards of humanity and feels not condemnation, but a deep and profound empathy. We are all flawed vessels, doing our best with the shape we were given. This metaphor becomes his great argument for a philosophy of compassion and forgiveness, not of divine judgment. He urges us to stop blaming ourselves and each other for our imperfections and to instead turn our questioning gaze toward the sky, toward the mysterious potter who set this great wheel of existence in motion. The potter and the clay is his eternal lawsuit against the cosmos, a case he pleads on behalf of all humanity. It is the ultimate expression of his refusal to accept that the universe is both all-powerful and all-good, when the evidence of his senses tells him that life is a tragic, beautiful, and deeply flawed masterpiece. From the silent indifference of the stars and the questionable craftsmanship of the divine potter, the astronomer-poet forged his core principle, a philosophy so simple and yet so radical that it remains a challenge to this day. It is the sacred doctrine of the now. He saw that human life is suspended between two great voids, a past that is nothing more than a memory, a ghost, and a future that is nothing more than a hope, a mirage. The past is a cancelled check, the future a promissory note. The only real currency, the only tangible asset we possess is the infinitesimally small, infinitely precious point of the present moment. This, for him, was the only paradise, the only reality. The great crime of the religions and philosophies he saw around him was that they conspired to rob humanity of this single treasure. They taught people to live in a state of perpetual anxiety, either burdened by the guilt of past sins or terrified of future punishments. They dangled the promise of a celestial paradise, a future reward for present suffering, and in so doing, they drained the color, the taste, the very lifeblood from the world that was right here, right now. He saw this as a cruel and terrible bargain. To sacrifice the tangible joy of a sunset for the abstract promise of a heavenly mansion was a fool's trade. To deny the pleasure of a shared meal, a beautiful verse, a cup of wine, in the name of a virtue that would only be rewarded after death, was to be already dead. His call to seize the day was not a call to mindless hedonism, but a call to radical mindfulness. It was an urgent plea to awaken from the dream of yesterday and tomorrow, and to arrive fully in the reality of today. His poetry is a manual for this awakening. He constantly reminds us of the fleeting nature of life, not to inspire morbidity, but to create urgency. The rose that will wither tomorrow must be enjoyed today. The friend who will one day be dust must be cherished in this moment. The wine that is in the cup must be savored now, for the cup will surely break. He taught that eternity is not a measure of time, but a quality of experience. An eternity of bliss could be found in a single moment of pure, unadulterated presence. To be fully present was to step outside of the relentless march of time, to touch a state of being that was timeless. This is the heart of his rebellion. It is the declaration of independence for the present moment. It is the understanding that salvation is not an event that happens at the end of life, but a choice that is made in every single second of it. It is the choice to be here, now, fully, and without apology. The logical consequence of embracing the now is a profound re-evaluation of the twin pillars of conventional religion, the fear of hell and the hope of heaven. For the astronomer-poet, these were not future destinations but present states of mind. They were the psychological tools used by the pious to control the populace, chains forged from the fear of death and the desire for eternal life. He saw them as the ultimate distractions, the grand illusions that kept humanity from engaging with the messy, beautiful, and sometimes painful reality of the here and now. With the sharp edge of his reason, he cut through the mythology. Hell, he suggested, is the fire of a life lived in regret, in fear, in longing for what is not. It is the internal torment of a mind that is never at peace, a soul that is constantly at war with itself, always grasping for a future that never arrives or clinging to a past that is gone forever. It is the experience of being absent from your own life. Heaven, conversely, is not a garden of earthly delights waiting in the afterlife. It is the exquisite peace that comes from a moment of pure presence. It is the joy of a mind that has ceased its frantic striving, a heart that is content with what is. It is the feeling of a cool breeze on a hot day, the sound of a beautiful melody, the shared laughter with a friend. Heaven is the texture of a fully lived moment. By relocating these concepts from the posthumous future to the psychological present, he performs a radical act of empowerment. He takes the keys to the kingdom from the hands of the priests and places them directly into our own. Our salvation, our damnation, is not in the hands of a distant, judgmental God. It is in our own hands, in every choice we make, in every moment. Do we choose to be present, to be grateful, to find joy in the simple, fleeting beauty of existence? That is the path to heaven. Or do we choose to be lost in anxiety, in resentment, in the endless pursuit of more, forever postponing our happiness until some future condition is met? That is the path to hell. This philosophy is both liberating and terrifying. It is liberating because it frees us from the fear of a cosmic tyrant. It is terrifying because it places the full responsibility for the quality of our lives squarely on our own shoulders. There are no excuses, no one else to blame. The universe is what it is. The great question he leaves us with is not whether we will be saved or damned in the next life, but whether we will choose to live in this one. A recurring and haunting image in the tavern of the astronomer-poet is that of dust. It is the final destination, the great equalizer, the undeniable truth that lies beneath all of our striving, our loving, and our questioning. He speaks of it without flinching, without the comfort of religious euphemism. We come from dust, and to dust we shall return. He sees this truth written in the very fabric of the world around him. The ancient ruins of empires, once mighty and proud, are now nothing but mounds of earth. The beautiful rose that delights the senses will soon be petals scattered on the ground, indistinguishable from the soil. Even the clay of the potter's wheel is made of the fine dust of what came before. This constant meditation on mortality is not intended to be morbid. It is, in his philosophy, the essential ingredient for a joyful life. It is only by fully confronting the reality of our own annihilation that we can begin to truly live. The fear of death, he observed, is the great poison. It is the source of all our anxieties, our greed, our desperate need to build legacies, to leave a mark, to pretend that we are not what we are, transient beings on a brief and beautiful journey. The preachers and mystics offered an antidote to this fear, the promise of an immortal soul, a life after death. But for the mathematician, this was an unproven hypothesis, a comforting story told to children in the dark. He chose a different antidote, radical acceptance. He chose to look the void in the face and not blink. He argued that to accept our eventual return to dust is to be liberated. When you know that your time is short, you stop wasting it. You stop postponing joy. You stop holding grudges. You forgive more easily. You love more deeply. You savor each moment with an intensity that is impossible for those who believe they have forever. The image of dust becomes a tool for spiritual clarity. He invites us to imagine that the very wine we drink is made from the dust of a once beautiful woman, that the clay of the cup was once the heart of a king. This is not a macabre fantasy. It is a profound lesson in interconnectedness and humility. It reminds us that we are part of a great continuous cycle of creation and dissolution. We are not separate from the world. We are the world, momentarily configured into a thinking, feeling being. To embrace the dust is to let go of the ego's desperate clinging to individuality. It is to find a strange and quiet peace in the knowledge that we will dissolve back into the great mystery from which we came. It is the final, ultimate surrender, and in that surrender, he suggests, lies the only true and lasting freedom. At the heart of the astronomer-poet's tavern, there is no altar, no holy book, no icon to be worshipped. There is only a single burning flame, the spirit of the question. For him, the ultimate sin was not blasphemy or indulgence, but the certainty of the zealot. The person who believes they have all the answers, who has closed their mind to any further inquiry, is the one who is truly lost. The great intellectual virtue, the highest state of grace, is to live in a state of honest, courageous doubt. He saw that certainty was a prison. It locks the mind into a rigid set of beliefs and shuts out the vast, beautiful, and often contradictory reality of the universe. The man who is certain can no longer learn. He can no longer see. He can only repeat the old formulas, the memorized verses, the second-hand truths that he has never examined for himself. Doubt, on the other hand, is freedom. It is the key that unlocks the prison of dogma. It is the engine of all discovery, all progress, all true understanding. To doubt is to be alive, to be engaged in a constant, dynamic conversation with existence. It requires more courage to doubt than to believe. Belief can be a passive acceptance of what one is told. Doubt is an active, ongoing investigation. It requires the strength to stand alone, to face the abyss of the unknown, without the comfort of a pre-packaged faith. It is the path of the intellectual warrior. He encourages us to turn this questioning spirit upon everything we hold dear, our religious beliefs, our cultural traditions, our personal philosophies. Are they true because we have experienced them to be true, or are they true because we were told they were true? This is the fundamental question. His poetry is not a set of answers, it is a collection of questions. Each verse is a challenge, a probe, a gentle, and sometimes not so gentle nudge to awaken us from our dogmatic slumber. He does not want us to believe in his philosophy. He wants us to create our own, forged in the fire of our own experience and our own relentless questioning. The tavern he invites us to is a gymnasium for the mind, a place to strengthen our intellectual and spiritual muscles. It is a space where no question is forbidden, where blasphemy is just another word for inquiry, and where the only sacred text is the one we are writing with our own lives. He teaches us that the goal of life is not to arrive at a final, static truth, but to learn to dance with the mystery, to become comfortable in the beautiful, vibrant, and ever-shifting landscape of the unknown. The astronomer-poet's philosophy is not a solitary pursuit. It is a deeply communal and relational one, and at its center is the profound value he places on companionship. In a world that is transient, in a universe that is silent and indifferent, the only true solace, the only real warmth, is to be found in the shared experience of our humanity. The tavern is not just a place for solitary drinking and thinking, it is a circle of friends. It is a space where honest conversation, shared laughter, and mutual consolation provide a fragile but beautiful shelter against the cold winds of existential reality. He constantly speaks of the beloved, the friend, the companion. This figure is often a lover, but the term encompasses a broader meaning. The beloved is anyone with whom we can share a moment of authentic presence. It is the person with whom we can drop the masks we wear for the world, with whom we can share our deepest doubts and our most fleeting joys. In the face of our inevitable return to dust, the connection with another soul becomes the most meaningful act in a meaningless universe. He argues that the abstract love of a distant, unseen God is a poor substitute for the tangible, felt love of a human being sitting beside you. Why spend a lifetime in devotion to a silent mystery when you can experience the divine in the eyes of a friend? This is a radical reorientation of the sacred. He finds the holy not in the mosque or the temple, but in the space between two people who are truly present with one another. The shared cup of wine becomes a more potent sacrament than any formal religious ritual. It is a symbol of a shared journey, a shared understanding of life's beauty and its sorrow. He urges us to invest our limited time and energy not in accumulating wealth or status or in pursuing some abstract notion of piety, but in cultivating these deep and authentic relationships. These are the only treasures that have any real value. When the certainty of dogma has failed, when the fear of death looms, it is the memory of a shared laugh, the warmth of a held hand that will provide the only true comfort. This is a deeply humanistic vision. It suggests that if there is any meaning to be found, it is not handed down from on high, but is created moment by moment in our interactions with each other. We are the source of our own salvation, and that salvation is spelled L-O-V-E. Not the abstract, philosophical love of God, but the real, messy, beautiful, and fleeting love of our fellow travelers on this journey to the dust. In his relentless examination of the world, the astronomer-poet finds one of his most powerful pieces of evidence for the value of the present in the transient, explosive beauty of the natural world. His poetry is filled with images of the garden, the rose, the tulip, the nightingale, the green shoots of spring. For him, the garden is not a metaphor for a future paradise. It is paradise itself, available here and now, but only for those with the eyes to see it. The rose is perhaps his most beloved symbol. He observes it with a scientist's precision and a poet's heart. He sees its perfect geometry, its vibrant color, its intoxicating scent. But the most important quality of the rose is its impermanence. It blooms for a short time in breathtaking glory, and then it withers, its petals falling to the ground to become dust. For many, this is a source of tragedy. For him, it is the source of the rose's value. Its beauty is so potent precisely because it is so fleeting. If the rose bloomed forever, we would cease to notice it. We would take its beauty for granted. Its mortality is what makes it precious. It is a silent teacher, instructing us in the central lesson of his philosophy: appreciate this moment, for it will not last. He draws a direct parallel between the life of the rose and the life of a human being. We too are like the rose. We have our brief season to bloom, to share our beauty with the world, and then we must return to the earth. To spend that short season worrying about what comes next is to miss the entire point of the blooming. The garden becomes his classroom for the soul. The cyclical nature of the seasons teaches him about the great rhythm of birth, death, and renewal. The coming of spring, with its impossible explosion of life after the cold death of winter, is a yearly miracle that requires no supernatural explanation. It is the universe itself, in its eternal dance of creation and destruction. He urges us to spend more time in the garden, to learn from the silent wisdom of the flowers and the birds. They do not worry about the past or the future. The nightingale sings its heart out on the branch, not for an audience or for a reward, but for the sheer joy of singing in this moment. The tulip opens its cup to the sun, not in the hope of eternal life, but in a simple, glorious celebration of the life it has right now. The garden is his answer to the sterile mosque and the dusty library. It is a living scripture, a vibrant, breathing testament to the sacredness of the immediate, tangible world. It teaches us that we do not need to look to the heavens for a miracle. We need only to look at the ground beneath our feet. The astronomer-poet's worldview is built upon a foundation of fierce intellectual honesty. He has a deep-seated contempt for hypocrisy, particularly the religious hypocrisy he saw all around him. He observes the men of piety, the self-proclaimed saints and guardians of morality, and he sees a deep and troubling contradiction. He sees men who preach of the glories of the afterlife, yet cling to this world with a desperate greed. He sees men who condemn the simple pleasures of the common folk, yet indulge in the secret pursuit of power, wealth, and influence. He sees men who wear the robes of humility, but whose hearts are filled with arrogance and judgment. This hypocrisy, for him, is a far greater sin than the honest indulgence of the tavern-goer. The so-called sinner who openly admits their love for life's pleasures is, in his eyes, more virtuous than the so-called saint who denies their own humanity and judges the humanity of others. The tavern, in this context, becomes a place of authenticity. It is a space where people are who they are, without pretense. The wine strips away the masks, and what is left is the raw, unvarnished truth of the human condition. He prefers this honest sin to a dishonest piety. At least the reveler in the tavern is not lying to himself or to the world. He champions the sincere skeptic over the dogmatic believer. He sees more spiritual potential in the person who is wrestling with difficult questions than in the one who is content with easy answers. The hypocrite, in his certainty, has ceased to grow. His soul has become stagnant. The questioner, in their doubt, is on a journey. Their soul is alive and in motion. His poems are often biting satires, aimed squarely at the religious establishment. He uses humor and irony to expose the absurdity of their positions. He points out the foolishness of worshipping at a dusty tomb when the living beauty of the garden is right outside. He questions the logic of a God who would forbid the very wine that he himself created. This is not just the grumbling of a cynic. It is the righteous anger of a man who loves truth and hates falsehood. He sees that this religious hypocrisy is not just a moral failing. It is a source of immense suffering. It creates a world of judgment, of shame, of guilt, where people are taught to hate their own natural desires and to fear their own minds. His call is a call for integrity. It is a plea for us to align our beliefs with our actions, to live in a way that is honest and true to our own experience of the world, rather than conforming to a set of external rules that even their enforcers do not truly follow. The figure of the astronomer-poet stands as a powerful champion of individualism against the crushing weight of conformity. In his era, as in ours, the pressure to conform to the tribe, to adopt the beliefs and behaviors of the group, was immense. To deviate from the norm was to risk ostracism, ridicule, and even death. The collective demanded allegiance to a shared set of doctrines, a shared cultural and religious identity. But his entire philosophy is a testament to the power and the necessity of the individual path. He trusted his own mind, his own senses, his own experience, above all else. His journey was an inward one, a deep and personal exploration of the universe as he encountered it. He did not look to the crowd for his truth. He looked to the stars, to the wine, to his own heart. This is a terrifying and exhilarating proposition. It means that we cannot hide behind the safety of a collective dogma. We cannot outsource our search for meaning to a priest, a guru, or a holy book. The responsibility is entirely our own. We must become, each of us, the primary investigators of our own existence. His poetry is a permission slip to be different, to think for oneself. He celebrates the outcast, the wanderer, the one who does not fit into the neat boxes of society. The tavern is the gathering place for these individuals, a collection of souls who have had the courage to leave the well-trodden highway of conformity and to forge their own path through the wilderness. This individualism is not a selfish or narcissistic one. It is not about rejecting others, but about refusing to be defined by them. It is about cultivating a deep and unwavering sense of inner authority. It is about learning to listen to the quiet voice of your own reason and your own intuition, even when the world is screaming at you to listen to something else. He understood that true community is not born from conformity, but from a gathering of authentic individuals. A forest is not made of identical trees. It is made of a diverse collection of trees, each one unique, yet all sharing the same soil and sky. In the same way, a healthy human society is one that respects and even celebrates the uniqueness of each individual. His legacy is a powerful reminder that the greatest contribution you can make to the world is to be unapologetically, authentically yourself. It is a call to have the courage to trust your own journey, to ask your own questions, and to find your own unique way of being in this beautiful, mysterious, and fleeting world. A profound sense of fatalism pervades the poetry of the astronomer-poet, a concept he describes with the metaphor of the moving finger. He envisions a celestial scribe, the moving finger, that writes the story of every life from beginning to end. Once a word is written, it cannot be erased. Our lives, our destinies are predetermined, written into the fabric of the universe before we were even born. He says, the moving finger writes, and having right, moves on, nor all thy piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out a word of it. This is a stark and unsettling vision. It seems to negate the very idea of free will. If our lives are already written, what is the point of our striving, our choices, our moral struggles? Are we simply puppets in a cosmic play, our strings pulled by an unseen hand? This is a paradox that he does not try to solve, but rather to embrace. He accepts the idea of a predetermined fate, not with despair, but with a strange and liberating sense of peace. If our destiny is already written, then the crushing burden of anxiety about the future is lifted. We can stop worrying about making the wrong choice, because the choices we are going to make are already part of the script. We can stop being consumed by regrets over the past, because the past could not have been any different. This fatalism, paradoxically, becomes a powerful argument for living fully in the present. Since we cannot change the script, our only real freedom lies in how we experience the scene we are in right now. We can choose to be present for it, to feel it fully, to engage with it with all our heart, or we can choose to be lost in a useless struggle against the inevitable. It is a philosophy of radical acceptance. It is the wisdom to distinguish between what we can control and what we cannot. We cannot control the script of our lives. We cannot control the ultimate destination, which is the dust. What we can control is the quality of our attention in this very moment. This is not a passive or lazy philosophy. He was a man of immense action and intellect, a scientist, a mathematician, a poet. His fatalism did not lead him to inaction, but to a different kind of action, action that is free from the anxiety of the result. He did his work, he loved his friends, he drank his wine, not because he believed these actions would change his ultimate fate, but because these actions were the substance of a life well lived. He found freedom not in the illusion of controlling his destiny, but in the surrender to it. It is the freedom of the river that does not struggle against its banks, but flows powerfully and gracefully toward the sea. The poetry of the astronomer-poet is not just a collection of philosophical ideas, it is a masterclass in the art of living. It provides a practical guide for how to navigate the challenges and the joys of a finite human existence. At its core, this guide is about cultivating a particular kind of perception, a way of seeing the world that is free from the distortions of fear and false hope. The first step in this art of living is to declutter the mind. He urges us to let go of the intellectual baggage we have accumulated, the dogmas, the doctrines, the second-hand beliefs. We must sweep the tavern of our mind clean to make space for what is real and true. This means questioning everything, especially the things we hold most sacred. The second step is to sharpen the senses. His philosophy is a deeply embodied one. He constantly calls us back to the physical, tangible world. We must learn to really taste the wine, to really see the rose, to really feel the warmth of the sun. The senses are our primary tools for experiencing reality. To live with dull senses is to be only half alive. We must awaken from our mental abstractions and return to the vibrant sensory world. The third step is to embrace impermanence. We must train ourselves to see the beauty in the fleeting, to love things not in spite of their transient nature, but because of it. This requires a constant practice of letting go, of releasing our attachment to outcomes, to people, to our own lives. It is a difficult practice, but it is the key to inner peace. When we are no longer afraid of loss, we are free to love fully and without reservation. The fourth step is to cultivate authentic relationships. We must invest our precious time in friendships that are based on honesty, trust, and a shared love for truth. We must create our own taverns, our own sacred spaces where we can be ourselves and engage in the kind of conversation that nourishes the soul. The fifth and final step is to live with a sense of gratitude and wonder. Despite the universe's indifference and the certainty of our own demise, life is a gift. The very fact of our consciousness, our ability to perceive this magnificent and terrifying cosmos, is a miracle. To awaken each morning and to be grateful for another day of sensory experience, another day to ask questions, another day to share a cup of wine with a friend. This is the ultimate expression of his philosophy. It is a simple yet profound recipe for a life of meaning, a life of joy, a life lived without illusion and without fear. The astronomer-poet's work can be seen as a grand and beautiful act of rebellion against fear. He identified fear as the central poison in the human soul, the invisible tyrant that governs most of our lives. He saw two primary fears that keep us enslaved, the fear of God and the fear of death. The fear of God, as taught by the religious authorities of his day, was the fear of a cosmic judge who is constantly watching, weighing our sins and preparing our eternal punishment. This fear, he argued, does not make people good. It makes them obedient. It makes them timid. It forces them to suppress their natural instincts, to distrust their own minds, and to live in a state of perpetual low-grade anxiety. It poisons the well of life, turning a potential paradise into a courtroom. His response to this fear was to question the character of the judge. He looked at the world and saw a creator who seemed far too playful, too mysterious, and too paradoxical to be the grim accountant described by the preachers. He chose to replace the fear of God with a profound and loving curiosity about the mystery of creation. The second great fear is the fear of death, the fear of personal annihilation. This fear drives us to desperate and often foolish acts. It makes us greedy for possessions, hungry for fame, desperate to build monuments that will outlast us. We are so afraid of becoming nothing that we forget to be something. His response to this fear was not to offer a comforting fairy tale of an afterlife, but to embrace the void with a clear-eyed courage. He argued that death is not a tragedy, but a natural and necessary part of the great cosmic dance. The fear of death is what prevents us from living. When we are constantly afraid of the end of the story, we cannot enjoy the chapter we are in. His entire philosophy is designed to be an antidote to these fears. The embrace of the present moment is the antidote to the fear of death, for in a state of pure presence, the thought of the future disappears. The embrace of doubt and questioning is the antidote to the fear of God, for it replaces blind obedience with active, engaged inquiry. He invites us into a tavern where these fears are not welcome. The wine of the present moment dissolves the fear of the future. The honest conversation among friends dispels the fear of judgment. It is a sanctuary of courage, a place where we can learn to live a life that is motivated not by fear but by love, a love for the world as it is, a love for our fellow travelers, and a love for the beautiful, fleeting, and unrepeatable miracle of our own existence. The legacy of the astronomer-poet is not a system of belief, but a particular kind of freedom. It is the freedom to think for oneself, to trust one's own experience, and to live an authentic life, even if that life defies the conventions of the world. He is not a prophet who demands followers. He is a friend in the tavern who passes you the cup and invites you to speak your own truth. His work has survived for a millennium, not because it provides comforting answers, but because it asks the right questions, the questions that every thoughtful human being must ask in their own heart. He gives us permission to doubt, to be uncertain, to be gloriously, wonderfully, and imperfectly human. He teaches us that it is okay to not have all the answers. In fact, it is better than okay. It is the beginning of wisdom. The world will always be full of those who claim to have the final truth, who want to sell you their map of the universe. He warns us to be wary of these map makers. He encourages us to be explorers, to draw our own maps based on our own journeys. The freedom he offers is not an easy one. It comes with the price of responsibility. If we are to be the authors of our own meaning, then we cannot blame anyone else for a life that is unlived. The canvas is blank, the clay is in our hands, even if the time we have to shape it is short. His message is ultimately one of empowerment. He tells us that we already possess all the tools we need to live a meaningful life. We have our senses to experience the beauty of the world. We have our reason to question and to understand. And we have our hearts to connect with one another. We do not need anything else. We do not need a priest to forgive our sins, a holy book to tell us what to believe, or the promise of an afterlife to give us hope. Paradise is here, now, in the taste of bread and wine, in the warmth of a friendship, in the silent beauty of the stars. This is a radical and deeply liberating truth. It is the secret that is whispered in his verses, the secret that has been kept alive in the hearts of rebels, poets, and thinkers for centuries. It is the simple, profound, and eternal truth that the kingdom of heaven is within you, if you only have the courage to open your eyes and see. The journey into the astronomer-poet's world begins with a confrontation with the silent, vast, and indifferent cosmos. It is a journey that forces us to let go of our childish need for a universe that revolves around us, a God who is preoccupied with our daily dramas. We stand before the celestial clockwork, the unfeeling perfection of the stars, and we are forced to acknowledge our own smallness, our own transience. This is the first and most difficult step, the acceptance of reality as it is, not as our comforting mythologies would have it be. The universe is not our parent. It does not owe us answers. It does not owe us meaning. This realization can feel like a cold and lonely abyss. The warmth of the old certainties is gone, and we are left shivering in the dark. But it is only in this darkness that our eyes can begin to adjust to a different kind of light. It is the light of our own consciousness, our own ability to reason, to feel, to create. Having accepted the silence of the heavens, we are then invited to turn our gaze downwards, towards the earth, towards our own lives. If meaning is not to be found out there, then it must be created in here. This is the great turning point in the journey. It is the shift from being a passive believer to an active creator of meaning. We begin to understand that the raw material of our lives, the joys, the sorrows, the loves, the losses, are the clay from which we must sculpt our own purpose. The tavern becomes our workshop, the present moment our only tool. We learn to see the world not as a testing ground for a future life, but as the main event, the performance itself. Every conversation, every meal, every sunset becomes an opportunity to practice the art of living, the art of being present. We learn that the sacred is not located in special buildings or on special days, but is woven into the very fabric of ordinary experience. The divine is in the details. This journey transforms our relationship with everything. Our fear of death becomes a catalyst for living more fully. Our doubt becomes a tool for deeper understanding. Our love for others becomes our most profound spiritual practice. We do not arrive at a final destination of enlightenment. Instead, we learn to travel in a different way. We learn to dance with the mystery, to find joy in the journey itself, rather than focusing on a destination that will never be reached. We become pilgrims of the now, wanderers in the beautiful and fleeting garden of the world. The astronomer-poet's challenge to the divine is not born of arrogance, but of a deep and wounded love. It is the cry of a heart that desperately wants the universe to be just, to be meaningful, to be compassionate, but is confronted with overwhelming evidence to the contrary. His blasphemy is a lover's quarrel with God. He looks at a world filled with senseless suffering, with beauty that is born only to die, with questions that are met with an eternal silence, and he cannot reconcile this with the image of a benevolent, all-powerful creator. His questions are not the idle musings of a detached philosopher. They are the passionate, painful cries of a soul grappling with the fundamental problem of existence. Why is there so much pain? Why is there so much injustice? Why create a heart that is capable of so much love, only to have it broken by loss? He holds up the cup of wine not as an act of defiance, but as a toast to the tragic beauty of it all. The wine is the symbol of life's intoxicating, fleeting joy, a joy that is always tinged with the sorrow of its own impermanence. In drinking the wine, he is accepting the whole of life, the bitter and the sweet, the pleasure and the pain. He is refusing the easy comfort of a faith that denies or explains away the darkness. He chooses to sit with the darkness, to look it in the eye, and to find a strange and terrible beauty within it. This is a mature and courageous spirituality. It is a spirituality that does not require the universe to be other than it is. It does not demand that life be fair. It accepts the cosmic mystery in its totality, with all its light and all its shadows. The eternal question that he poses is not really a question at all. It is a statement. It is a declaration that despite the silence of the heavens, despite the indifference of the stars, despite the certainty of our own death, it is still possible to live a life of joy, of love, of meaning. It is a meaning that we create ourselves, a joy that we distill from the grapes of our own experience, a love that we share with our fellow travelers in the brief and precious time we have together. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, its ability to find light in the darkest of rooms, to sing a beautiful song in the face of an endless silence. The astronomer-poet's vision of time is a radical departure from the linear, progressive view that dominates most of Western thought. We are taught to see time as a line stretching from a fixed past to an open future. We live our lives on this line, always moving forward, striving to get somewhere, to achieve something, to arrive at a destination. But he saw time not as a line, but as a point, the eternal now. He understood that the past is a phantom, existing only as a trace in our memory, and the future is a fantasy, existing only as a projection of our imagination. The only reality is this present moment. This is not just a philosophical concept, it is a direct experience that is available to anyone who has the discipline to pay attention. He invites us to conduct an experiment. Try to find the past. You cannot. It is gone. Try to find the future. You cannot. It has not yet arrived. All you can ever find is this single, ever-changing yet ever-present moment. To truly grasp this is to be liberated from the two great sources of human suffering, regret and anxiety. Regret is the act of living in a past that no longer exists. Anxiety is the act of living in a future that does not yet exist. Both are forms of insanity, a refusal to live in the only place where life is actually happening. The embrace of the now is therefore the embrace of sanity. It is the choice to align our consciousness with reality. This does not mean that we do not learn from the past or plan for the future. He was, after all, a scientist and a planner. It means that we do these things from the stable ground of the present. We learn from the past without being imprisoned by it. We plan for the future without being lost in it. Our primary home, our true address, is always the present moment. His poetry is a constant series of reminders, of alarm bells, designed to wake us up from the dream of time. Fools, your reward is neither here nor there. Ah, fill the cup. What boots it to repeat how time is slipping underneath our feet? He is constantly shaking us by the shoulders, urging us to pay attention, to notice the miracle that is unfolding right in front of us, a miracle that we are missing because we are lost in the labyrinth of our own minds. To live in the now is to discover that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. It is to find that the destination was here all along. The Tavern of the Astronomer-Poet is a place of profound intellectual and spiritual alchemy. It is where the base metal of our fear and ignorance is transformed into the gold of wisdom and courage. The catalyst for this transformation is the fearless application of reason. He was a man of science, a man who believed in the power of the human intellect to penetrate the mysteries of the universe. He did not see a conflict between reason and spirituality. In fact, he saw reason as the highest spiritual tool. It is the sharp knife that allows us to cut away the tangled vines of superstition, dogma, and second-hand belief that obscure the truth. The religious authorities of his time demanded blind faith. They taught that the intellect was a dangerous thing, a source of pride and heresy. They encouraged people to shut down their critical thinking and to simply accept the doctrines they were given. He saw this as a recipe for spiritual slavery. He argued that a faith that cannot withstand questioning is not a faith worth having. He believed that the divine, if it exists, must be a reality that is consistent with reason and evidence. He applied this rational lens to everything. He looked at the competing claims of different religions and saw them as human constructs, different attempts to explain the same underlying mystery. He saw the absurdity of fighting and dying for one set of metaphors over another. He looked at the concept of divine justice and found it to be logically inconsistent with the nature of the world. He looked at the promises of the afterlife and found them to be without a shred of empirical evidence. This use of reason is not a cold, life-denying process. For him, it is an act of liberation. It is the process of freeing the mind from its self-imposed prisons. It is about having the courage to follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if it leads to uncomfortable or unsettling conclusions. The tavern is a space where this rational inquiry is celebrated. It is a place for debate, for discussion, for the joyful exercise of the mind. It is a place where we learn that we do not need to choose between the head and the heart. We can have both. We can have a heart that is full of love for the beauty of the world and a head that is clear, critical, and unafraid of the truth. This synthesis of reason and passion, of intellect and emotion, is the hallmark of his genius. It is the secret to the alchemy that happens within the four walls of his imaginary tavern. The astronomer-poet's work is a powerful meditation on the nature of joy. In a world so full of suffering and uncertainty, where does genuine, lasting joy come from? His answer is clear and consistent. Joy is not a product of external circumstances. It is not to be found in wealth, in status, in power, or even in the fulfillment of our desires. All of these things are transient, subject to the whims of fate. The palace of today can be the ruin of tomorrow. The hero of today can be the forgotten dust of tomorrow. To build our happiness on such shifting sands is to guarantee a life of anxiety and disappointment. The source of true joy, he argues, is internal. It is a quality of consciousness. It is the joy that arises from a mind that is at peace with reality. It is the joy of being fully present, of savoring the sensory richness of the moment without craving for it to be different or for it to last forever. It is the joy of a mind that has been liberated from the prison of the ego with its endless demands, its fears, and its vanities. This is a subtle but profound shift in perspective. Instead of chasing after joyful experiences, we cultivate a joyful way of being. This joy is not a giddy, manic happiness. It is a deep, quiet, and stable sense of well-being that is not easily shaken by the storms of life. It is a joy that can coexist with sorrow. He is not a naive optimist. He is acutely aware of the tragic dimension of human existence. He speaks often of tears, of loss, of the pain of separation. But he suggests that it is possible to hold this sorrow in one hand and joy in the other. It is possible to weep for the death of a friend while still being grateful for the beauty of the sunset. This is the emotional maturity that his philosophy cultivates. It is the ability to embrace the full spectrum of human experience without being overwhelmed by it. The wine is his symbol for this kind of joy. It is a joy that is tinged with melancholy, a pleasure that is sharpened by the knowledge of its own brevity. It is a wise joy, a sober intoxication. It is the quiet, contented happiness of the person who has stopped searching for a paradise in the next world and has discovered it in this one. The astronomer-poet's perspective on the world is that of the ultimate outsider. He stands apart from the tribes of his time, refusing to be defined by any of them. He is not a devout Muslim in the orthodox sense, nor is he a Sufi mystic seeking union with God. He is not a hedonist, a cynic, or an atheist in the modern sense of those terms. He occupies a unique and lonely space, the space of the honest, independent thinker. From this vantage point, he is able to see the world with a piercing clarity. He sees the patterns, the absurdities, the self-deceptions that are invisible to those who are caught up in the games of their respective groups. He is like a man standing on a hilltop, watching the various caravans in the desert below, each one convinced that it is on the only true path to the oasis. From his perspective, he can see that they are all just going in circles. This outsider status is the source of his power and his vulnerability. It is his power because it allows him to speak a truth that is not compromised by the need to belong. He is not trying to please a congregation, a patron, or a political party. He is responsible only to his own reason and his own experience. This gives his voice an authority and an integrity that is timeless. But it is also his vulnerability. To be an outsider is to be alone. It is to be misunderstood, criticized, and often condemned by all sides. The Orthodox condemn him for his blasphemy. The mystics condemn him for his worldliness. The hedonists misunderstand his call to joy as a call to mindless indulgence. He is a man without a tribe, a wanderer in the no-man's land between the warring camps of belief. And yet, it is in this very space that he builds his tavern. The tavern is the sanctuary for all the other outsiders, all the other spiritual and intellectual refugees who have found themselves unable to pledge allegiance to any flag. It is the one place where they can come together and find fellowship, not in a shared set of answers, but in a shared commitment to the question. His legacy is an invitation to this outsider-dom. It is a call to have the courage to stand alone, to think for yourself, to be an individual in a world that is always trying to force you into a category. It is a reminder that the most profound truths are often found not in the center of the crowd, but on the lonely, wind-swept edges of the world. The astronomer-poet's engagement with the world is characterized by a unique blend of passion and detachment. He is deeply in love with the world. He loves the wine, the rose, the song, the face of the beloved. His poetry is a testament to his passionate engagement with the sensory, emotional, and intellectual richness of life. He is not a cold, withdrawn ascetic who denies the world. He is a lover who embraces it in all its messy, beautiful, and tragic glory. He urges us to dive into the river of life, to feel it fully, to participate in it with all our heart. And yet, at the same time, he maintains a profound sense of detachment. He knows that all of this is a fleeting show. The rose will wither, the beloved will turn to dust, the wine cup will shatter. He loves the world, but he holds it lightly. He does not cling. This is one of the most difficult and subtle aspects of his philosophy. How can one be both passionate and detached? How can one love deeply without becoming attached? The key lies in the understanding that the attachment is not the same as love. Love is the joyful appreciation of something or someone as they are. Attachment is the fearful clinging to them, the desire for them to be permanent, to be a source of lasting security. Attachment is rooted in the ego's fear of loss. Love is rooted in the soul's joyous participation in the dance of existence. He practices a kind of love that is free from the need to possess. He can enjoy the beauty of the rose without needing to own the garden. He can love his friend without needing that friend to be a certain way or to stay with him forever. This is a radical and liberating form of love. It is a love that does not create suffering because it is not based on expectation or demand. It is a love that is given freely, without thought of return. This blend of passion and detachment allows him to navigate the world with a unique kind of grace. He can experience the heights of joy without becoming arrogant and the depths of sorrow without falling into despair. He is like a skilled sailor who can navigate the stormy seas of life because he is not attached to any particular destination. His only goal is to sail well, to be present with the wind and the waves. It is the ultimate art of living, to be fully in the world, but not of it. To love the game, but to know that it is a game. To play your part with passion and with skill, but to never forget that the play is temporary and the stage will soon be empty. The astronomer-poet's final word is not a word at all, but a profound and resonant silence. After all the questions have been asked, after all the wine has been drunk, after all the arguments have been made, we are left with the great, unanswerable mystery of existence. He is not a philosopher who claims to have solved this mystery. He is a poet who has learned to live within it, to be comfortable with it, to find a strange and beautiful peace in it. The silence he points to is not an empty void. It is a living, intelligent presence. It is the silence that precedes creation, the silence from which all words, all music, all forms emerge. It is the ultimate reality, the ground of all being. To come into contact with this silence is the final goal of his journey. The tavern, for all its noise and revelry, is ultimately a place of deep listening. It is a place where we learn to quiet the incessant chatter of our own minds so that we can hear the subtle, wordless music of the universe. The practice he recommends for this is simple. Be present. When you are fully present, the mind naturally becomes quiet. The endless stream of thoughts about the past and future subsides, and you are left in the vast, peaceful space of the now. In this space, there are no questions and no answers. There is only being. This is the ultimate sobriety that is found through the path of intoxication. The wine of the present moment ultimately leads to a clarity that is beyond the reach of the logical mind. It is a direct, intuitive knowing, a felt sense of connection to the great mystery. This is why his poetry often ends on a note of humility and awe. He leads us to the edge of the abyss of the unknown, and he invites us to simply stand there and look without demanding an explanation. He teaches us that the highest form of knowledge is the knowledge of our own ignorance. The wisest man is the one who knows that he knows nothing. This is not a philosophy of despair, but of liberation. When we let go of our desperate need to know, we are free to simply experience. Life is no longer a problem to be solved, but a work of art to be appreciated. We become participants in the mystery, dancers in the great, silent, and beautiful dance of existence. And in that dance, we find a joy and a peace that words can never capture. The astronomer-poet's vision offers a unique form of spiritual companionship. He does not present himself as a master or a guru who is above us. He is a friend, a fellow traveler, a companion in the tavern who understands our doubts and shares our thirst. His poetry is not a sermon from on high, it is an intimate conversation, a whisper in the ear of a kindred spirit. He speaks to the part of us that has always felt a little out of place in the world, the part of us that has looked at the rituals and the certainties of organized religion and felt a sense of alienation. He validates our skepticism. He celebrates our questioning. He assures us that we are not alone in our confusion. This sense of companionship is one of the most attractive and enduring aspects of his work. In a world that often feels lonely and fragmented, he creates a sense of community. It is a community that is not based on a shared creed or a shared geography, but on a shared state of mind. It is the invisible republic of the free thinkers, the borderless nation of the honest questioners. To read his work is to be initiated into this community, to realize that there have been others who have walked this path before, who have wrestled with these same questions, who have found a way to live a life of integrity and joy in a world that often seems to conspire against it. He becomes our confidant. We can tell him our secret blasphemies, our deepest doubts, and he will not judge us. He will simply nod, smile, and pour us another cup of wine. He is the wise, witty, and compassionate friend that everyone wishes they had. He gives us the courage to be ourselves, to trust our own intuition, and to walk our own path, no matter how lonely or difficult it may be. He is a testament to the fact that one does not need a formal religion or a spiritual institution to live a deep and meaningful life. All one needs is an honest heart, a curious mind, and a few good friends to share the journey with. His tavern is always open, its doors unlocked to anyone who is thirsty for truth, for beauty, for a moment of authentic connection in this fleeting and mysterious life. He has been waiting for us there for 1,000 years, and his invitation is still as fresh and as potent as the day it was written. The astronomer-poet's entire philosophy can be distilled into a single central challenge, the challenge to awaken. He saw the vast majority of humanity as being asleep, walking through their lives in a dream state. They are dreaming the dream of the past and the future, the dream of the ego, the dream of cultural and religious dogma. They are not truly alive because they are not truly present. Their lives are a series of automatic reactions, of conditioned responses, of playing out a script that has been handed to them by their society. They are sleepwalkers, and the tragedy is that they do not know they are asleep. His poetry is a series of loud noises designed to wake us from this slumber. It is a splash of cold water in the face. He is constantly shouting, "Wake up! Pay attention! Your life is slipping away while you are lost in your dreams." The wine is his primary tool for this awakening. It is the alchemical substance that can jolt the mind out of its habitual patterns and into a state of heightened awareness. The tavern is the school for this awakening, the place where we can practice the art of being present in a world that is constantly trying to lull us back to sleep. This awakening is not a one-time event. It is a continuous practice. It is the moment-by-moment choice to be here, now. It requires discipline, courage, and a relentless commitment to the truth. We must constantly be on guard against the soporific forces of habit, of conformity, of fear. We must be willing to feel the discomfort of being fully alive, the raw, unfiltered reality of our own existence. The world of the sleepwalker is a comfortable, padded cell. The world of the awakened one is a vibrant, unpredictable, and often dangerous landscape. He calls us to leave the safety of the cell and to step out into the wilderness of the real. This is the ultimate adventure. It is the journey from the illusion of the separate self to the reality of our interconnectedness with all of existence. It is a discovery that we are not just a drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in a drop. This is the secret knowledge that is revealed to those who have the courage to awaken. It is a knowledge that cannot be taught, only experienced. And the experience is available in every moment, to anyone who is willing to stop, to look, to listen, and to wake up to the breathtaking miracle of their own being. The astronomer-poet's perspective on love is both earthly and transcendent. He rejects the purely platonic, desexualized love that was often promoted by the religious ascetics of his time. He celebrates the physical, passionate, and intoxicating love between human beings. He sees the body as a sacred vessel and the union of two lovers as a powerful spiritual practice. In the embrace of the beloved, he finds a temporary escape from the loneliness of the individual ego. It is a moment of merger, of dissolution, where the boundaries of the self become blurred and we get a taste of a larger unity. The beauty of the beloved's face, the touch of their hand, these are not distractions from the divine, they are manifestations of it. He finds God not in an abstract heaven, but in the concrete, tangible reality of a loving relationship. However, this earthly love is also a stepping stone to a larger, more universal love. The love for a single person teaches us how to love the world. The compassion, the empathy, the sense of connection that we feel for our beloved can be expanded to include all of humanity, all of life. The particular becomes a doorway to the universal. He also recognizes the inherent tragedy of human love. Our beloveds are, like us, mortal. They will change, they will leave, they will die. To love is to open oneself up to the certainty of eventual loss and heartbreak. The ascetic avoids this pain by avoiding love altogether. The poet chooses a different path. He chooses to love fully, to embrace the joy and the pain of it, to accept the wound of love as a necessary part of a life well lived. He would rather have a heart that is broken than a heart that has never learned to love at all. The experience of love, for him, becomes another piece of evidence, in his case, against a benevolent God. Why would a kind creator design a world where the deepest source of our joy is also the deepest source of our sorrow? It is another of the beautiful, terrible paradoxes that he refuses to explain away. He simply presents it in all its complexity and invites us to live it with courage and with grace. In the end, love, like wine, is a form of intoxication, a way of breaking down the walls of the self and experiencing a moment of ecstatic connection with the larger mystery of life. It is a fleeting paradise, a temporary shelter in a heartless world, and one of the few things that makes the journey worthwhile. The astronomer-poet lived and wrote in a world that was, in many ways, as turbulent and as polarized as our own. It was a time of political upheaval, of religious conflict, of clashing empires and warring ideologies. And yet, his poetry contains a radical and deeply subversive political message, a message of peace and non-violence. This message does not come from a place of naive idealism, but from a deep, pragmatic understanding of human nature and the futility of conflict. He saw the great battles, the crusades, the jihads, the struggles for power and territory, as a monumental waste of the precious, limited time that we have on this earth. He watched kings and sultans rise and fall, empires turn to dust, and he saw the vanity in it all. What is the point of conquering a kingdom when you cannot conquer your own mortality? What is the value of a throne when you will one day be a handful of anonymous dust? From his cosmic perspective, the squabbles of humanity seemed absurdly small. The lines that we draw on maps, the flags that we wave, the religious labels that we use to divide ourselves from one another, all of these are fictions, illusions that we have created and then forgotten that we created them. We are all just temporary guests at the same cosmic tavern, and it is the height of foolishness to spend our short time here fighting with the other guests. His solution is not to engage in the political game, but to withdraw from it. He advocates for a kind of inner retirement, a cultivation of the garden of one's own soul. He suggests that the only revolution that truly matters is the internal one, the overthrow of the tyranny of the ego, the liberation of the mind from the chains of dogma. If enough individuals were to undertake this inner work, he implies, the outer world would naturally transform. A person who is at peace with themselves is not a person who is interested in going to war. A person who has found joy in the simple pleasures of life is not a person who is consumed by the lust for power. His is a quiet rebellion. It is the rebellion of the gardener, the poet, the winemaker, the lover. It is the choice to create a small pocket of sanity, of beauty, of peace in a world that is often mad, ugly, and violent. It is a reminder that the ultimate power is not the power to command armies, but the power to be the master of your own mind, the captain of your own soul. The final legacy of the astronomer-poet is an atmosphere, a mood, a flavor. It is the feeling of a cool evening in a fragrant garden with a cup of wine in your hand, a book of poetry in your lap, and the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. It is a mood of peaceful, contemplative, and slightly melancholy wisdom. He does not offer a grand system, a set of rules, or a path to salvation. He offers a way of being in the world. It is a way of being that is characterized by intellectual honesty, emotional maturity, and a deep appreciation for the fleeting beauty of life. To enter into his world is to be given a new set of eyes with which to see our own. We begin to notice the small miracles that we were previously too busy to see. The way the light falls on a leaf, the sound of a distant bird, the taste of fresh water. We begin to question the things we once took for granted, to see the cracks in the foundations of our own beliefs. We begin to value our relationships more, to see our friends and loved ones not as permanent fixtures in our lives, but as precious, temporary gifts. We begin to be a little more tolerant, a little more compassionate, both with ourselves and with others. We realize that we are all just flawed vessels, doing our best to hold the intoxicating wine of life without spilling too much. We become less afraid of death, seeing it not as an enemy to be fought, but as a natural and peaceful return to the great mystery from which we came. We become, in short, a little bit wiser, a little bit sadder, and a great deal more joyful. He is a dangerous poet to read. He will ruin you for the simple, black and white certainties of the world. He will infect you with a love for the questions themselves, rather than a need for the answers. He will break your heart, and then he will show you how to find a strange and beautiful strength in the broken places. He will lead you out into the desert of the unknown, and he will leave you there, alone with the silent stars. And for that, if we had the courage to accept the gift, we should be eternally grateful. His tavern remains open, a timeless refuge for all those who are brave enough to live without illusion. The journey with the astronomer-poet is, in the end, a journey home. But it is not a journey to a geographical place or a heavenly paradise. It is a journey home to ourselves, to the core of our own being. We begin the journey as exiles, feeling alienated from the universe, searching for a meaning that seems to be located somewhere outside of ourselves. We are looking for a God in the sky, a truth in a book, a purpose in a grand cosmic plan. We are convinced that our home is somewhere else, and that we must strive and struggle to get there. But he gently, and sometimes forcefully, guides us back from these external quests. He closes the door to the mosque. He puts away the holy book. He points out the silence of the heavens. He systematically dismantles all of our hopes for an external salvation. This can be a painful and disorienting process. It is the process of becoming an orphan, of realizing that we are alone in the cosmos. But it is only when we have fully accepted this cosmic loneliness that we can begin to discover the treasure that is hidden within it. The treasure is the realization that we are the home we have been seeking. The source of meaning, of joy, of love, is not outside of us, it is within us. We are the creators of our own meaning. We are the distillers of our own joy. We are the source of our own love. This is the great and final secret. It is the discovery that the divine is not a being who resides in heaven, but a quality of consciousness that resides within our own hearts. It is the capacity to be present, to be aware, to love, to create. To come home is to awaken this divine capacity within ourselves. It is to stop being a seeker and to start being a finder. It is to realize that the paradise we have been searching for is not a future destination, but a present reality. It is the garden of this world, the company of our friends, the beauty of this fleeting moment. The journey ends where it began, but we are changed. We are no longer exiles. We are inhabitants. We are finally and fully at home in our own lives, at home in the beautiful, terrifying, and mysterious universe.